Alright, hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Alexis and I am a third year PhD student studying biological oceanography at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and today I'm going to be doing my very first book review. This is kind of something that I've been wanting to do for a long time because I feel like I like reading a lot of books and kind of started reading a lot of self-help books in my freshman year of undergrad, and now I feel like I've just read so many books but haven't really been able to share and talk about them, so that's kind of what I want to start doing now. I thought I'd start talking and reviewing some of the books that I've read. So the very first book that I'm gonna do is Why Fish Don't Exist. It is a story of loss, love, and the hidden order of life by Lulu Miller. So this one. It's a nice hardcover book. I think it's 250 pages. Cool illustrations on it and stuff. And you don't even have to care about fish in order to enjoy this book. Okay, so I'm starting with this book because it was probably my favorite book that I read during the pandemic, and one that has really stuck with me and I've recommended to the most people because I just feel like there's something in it for everyone, and it was a really nice story, like very well put together, I thought, and I really enjoyed it and wanted to share it with all of you guys. So I wanted to begin by describing the book in 3 sentences, and I have some notes, so I'm going to be looking on my phone a little bit. Hopefully that's not distracting. But the first is that nothing in life is certain except death, taxes, and the second law of thermodynamics, which is entropy. This is a quote by Seth Lloyd, and I think she even mentions it in the book somewhere, but I thought it does a pretty good job of summarizing the book, kind of. The second quote is that people are not always who we think they are on the surface, and that eventually chaos creeps up on everyone. And I'll go into a little bit more depth later about what I mean by entropy and chaos and things like that. So stay tuned to see what that's all about. The third sentence is that scientifically speaking, the word fish doesn't really exist. However, fish is just a word that we make up, so like ideas that we give names that hold some sort of meaning that we use in order to describe the world around us. So, you know, fish may not exist scientifically, but that doesn't mean that they mean nothing to us, because you know what I mean when I say fish. I know what you mean when you tell me you saw a fish, so obviously fish must mean something. And yeah, it's just something that we give meaning to. Okay, so next I wanted to give you guys a quick summary of the plot of the book for those of you that haven't read it, just so you can kind of get an idea of what is actually in the book. So this story is written by Lulu Miller, who is actually an NPR reporter, and she is basically obsessed with this fish taxonomist whose name is David Starr Jordan. And as it turns out, we find out later, he is the founding president of Stanford University, but also a big advocator for eugenics and kind of a white supremacist, which she didn't really know about in the beginning, but found out a little bit later. Anyway, she's really obsessed with this guy because he spent decades of his life collecting fish from rivers, streams, lakes, and organizing them. So he would describe their characteristics, organize them, give them names, kind of like figure out which ones are more related, which ones are less related, and just bringing order to this thing we call fishes. And he was so dedicated to this task that even when life threw obstacles at him, for example, one of his collections was ruined by a fire, so he had to collect more fish, re-describe them, all of that, and then his collection is destroyed by the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, which brings all of the jars of fish like to the ground, shattered, formalin everywhere. Really a huge mess to clean up. And there's just fish tags and fish all over the floor, completely mixed up. And you think this would like stop most people, but it didn't stop him. He continued to fight these obstacles and persevered and just rebuilt his collections. And even with a new method this time, such that he would sew the identification tag of the fish to its body, like to its skin or its scales. And this way, in the future, if anything like this happened again, he would know exactly which tag belonged to which fish and kind of make the process of redoing it a little bit easier. This is the guy that Lulu Miller was obsessed with. And then the book gets into a little bit more about her life and her challenges with depression, suicidal thoughts, and her 7-year relationship coming to an end. This is really which sparks her quest to digging into this guy's life and finding out how he persevered. Like, how were there people like him that just kept going, kept fighting back at life when they were met with such chaos and, I don't know, just terrible things happening to them. So how did David Starr Jordan and people like him keep going when it felt like all hope was lost and most people would just give up and throw in the towel? And now I'll get into a discussion of the book and share my thoughts on some of these topics. So firstly, I'll say that I think the book is kind of all over the place. Maybe a little bit like this book review. I don't know. Let me know and maybe I can do better in the future. But the book seems to jump around from David Starr Jordan's life and then Lulu Miller's life as a kid and as an adult, and then back to David Starr Jordan, his past and kind of his whole life, and then back to her own, and then jumps to like the science of fish and stuff. So really just, I don't know. You never really know what to expect, which I really enjoyed. I like that this book kept me on my toes. Yeah, I just really thought there was something in it for everyone. Whether you were more into the story, the history, her life, her challenges, or just fish. I really enjoyed it. So, as I mentioned before, the book begins with introducing one of the main characters, David Starr Jordan, this fish taxonomist. And she's describing like why he's so impressive, how much he's contributed to science, and spent his life organizing fish. Yeah, she starts a little bit with his life, his major contributions, a little bit about his personality maybe. And then the book jumps to Lulu Miller's life. And we learn a little bit about when she was a kid and her relationship with her father, his views on life. We learn about her romantic relationships, her struggles with depression and suicidal thoughts, and some of the mistakes that she's made in her own life. So, as a kid, Lulu Miller's father was kind of a nihilist, and he would tell her that you don't matter, kind of like nothing you do matters in the grand scheme of things, and this never really sat well with her as a kid, which is completely understandable, because if my parents had told me like you don't matter, I'm sure that would have just made me more sad than anything else. But now as an adult, you can kind of see that he wasn't saying this to be mean. He was saying this to free her in a sense, such that what she did didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Like, you are just one person on this entire planet. No one's really paying that much attention to you. Therefore, you can kind of do what you want, make the mistakes that you want, and yeah, it doesn't matter that much. And he would also tell her, well, other people don't matter either. Treat them as if they do. And I thought this was a really great piece of advice. One, because he's being consistent by like, she doesn't matter, but also other people don't matter. But treat them with respect. And yeah, this just seems like really great advice coming from the father. And I think she understood that part a little bit more than the you don't matter. Then we start learning about her life as an adult and her struggles with depression, suicidal thoughts, her romantic relationships, and the failures and mistakes that she's experienced in her own life. And I just wanted to mention here as a disclaimer that this book does talk about depression and suicide. If that is especially triggering for you, then you may want to avoid reading this book. So just be aware that, well, this isn't a main focus of the book, it is mentioned in it. And as we're learning about Lulu Miller's struggles with life, specifically this significant relationship that was really meaningful to her comes to an end. And I don't want to give you guys any spoilers or anything about exactly how it comes to an end or what happens there, but you guys should read the book to find out. And it is really sad, but I do like that she's being so vulnerable with us, telling us about the mistakes she's made and the consequences that they've had. And I felt like I could relate to her because she was a bisexual woman, so I thought that was pretty cool. And yeah, maybe that made me a little bit more interested in the author and her life. So during this really rough time of her life, it seems like a pretty low point for her. She goes back to this guy that she remembered learning about, David Starr Jordan. And she remembered that he kept fighting chaos and bad things that were happening to his life and to his collection. And she kind of wanted to find out what it was about him, what crazy thing was inside him that kept him going, whether it was like perseverance, grit, something like that. She wanted to identify what it was so that she can kind of help herself go through this really tough point in her life. So yeah, how do people keep going when life gets rough? Is it just being an optimist, believing that better things will come, or like letting go of the past and just really being in the present moment, right? Because people say if you're truly present, you don't have anxiety about the future or depression about the past. So was it something like that, or what was it exactly? That was her major question. So just kind of as like a tangent or a side thing, I wanted to talk about what I meant by like life is chaos, and the only true thing that we know to happen in life is like entropy. And entropy is actually the second law of thermodynamics. And for those of you that aren't really scientists or don't really care about all that, essentially, as we go forward in time, entropy will increase or at least stay the same. And this entropy is essentially the measure of the amount of disorder. And this is any disorder that affects any and all aspects of our life. So yeah, life is chaos because all life ends in death. You know, we have life and we have death. And death is kind of like the major entropy, right? Because everything just completely falls apart. And I think aging is a perfect example of entropy, because as we get older, our bodies start having more problems. Our organs and stuff start having more problems. People that are older are more at risk for getting sick or getting diseases or things like cancer. And eventually our bodies just accumulate so much disorder, so many things stop functioning as they should, then we die. So I think that's like a pretty good description or analogy of what entropy looks like. And I'm not really saying this to be like really dark, saying that life just ends in death, even though it does, right? But it's not a bad thing. It's actually a really beautiful thing if you think about it, because death and this impermanence is kind of the only thing that gives our life meaning. Because if we lived forever and knew we were going to live forever, then maybe we would just waste more time, or time wouldn't be as valuable and precious to us as it is. But our life has meaning because we know that we're not going to be around forever. So we try to make best use of the time that we have now and try to have an impact on other people's lives and future generations so that we live through other people, or our ideas are living through other people. So, yeah, that's just a side thing. Like, life is chaos, death is the only certain thing, but it's not bad. It's like beautiful. It's what gives our life meaning. So, going back to Lulu Miller, her big question was, how do people keep going when life gets so hard? So, in order to answer this, she dives really, really deep into David Starr Jordan's past. And what she finds is really surprising. She finds out that her idol, this guy that she thought was like a hero, super great, also has his like dark sides and secrets about him. So it seems like chaos even caught him at times. He wasn't all good. And I really don't want to spoil the book for you guys that are going to read it. So read it to find out why his history or his life wasn't as clean as she thought it was. But it turns out to be just so crazy. And you can't believe that she like idolized this guy for as long as she did. And towards the end of the book, it starts getting like really bizarre and jaw-dropping, and I'll let you guys read that to find out. But I wanted to quickly wrap up the part about why fish don't exist, and I think Lulu Miller does a really great job of explaining this, especially for people that aren't in science or don't understand taxonomy like I do, right? Because I was an ecology and evolutionary biology major in undergrad. So yeah, the really funny thing is that she wraps up with why fish don't exist, scientifically speaking, which is just really funny because this guy spent his whole life organizing, describing, putting order to fish that don't even exist, scientifically speaking. So like, was all of his work for nothing? Probably not, but it's really funny when you think about it that way. I don't want to get too scientific here, but fish don't exist as a scientific grouping because they are what we call paraphyletic. And maybe I can show you what that looks like. But anyway, fish are paraphyletic because they contain a common ancestor, but not all of its descendants, right? Not all of the branches. They exclude a few, which means that they are not a clade. And a clade is a grouping that holds some like significance in science because it is the most recent common ancestor and all of its descendants. But fish are not this. And because fish do not include some descendants like tetrapods, which are made up of humans, frogs, kangaroos, crocodiles, means that it cannot be a clade, and therefore it is not really a scientific category that is recognized by cladists. So yeah, fish don't exist scientifically speaking, and I thought it was really good that she addressed or like wrapped it up nicely, you know, because this is the title and she is telling you why fish don't exist through this like very giant story. But yeah, it was also super interesting because then she goes into like, you know, scientifically speaking, we don't recognize the word fish as like a real category with a ton of meaning. However, in everyday sense, the word fish holds a lot of meaning, right? Because it's just a word that we made up to describe this group of animals that kind of look the same, and we're just kind of making sense of the world around us. So it's not totally meaningless, even though it kind of is on the scientific side of it. Okay, hopefully I did not get way too scientific for you guys and ruin it for you, but go read the book. I promise it's going to be worth it, and I really do think that there's going to be something in this book that kind of sticks with you. I thought she was a really good writer, very enjoyable to read, and it's a thin book. It really did not take me that much time to finish. Please let me know how you liked this book review and if I should do more. Also, feel free to drop some suggestions of books that you would like me to read and do a book review on. I would be more than happy to read some of the books that you guys suggest. I'm always looking for new books, science related or not. And for now, go read Why Fish Don't Exist. I'll put an Amazon link to it in the description, and keep binge watching our PhD vlogs for PhD life in Hawaii. Thank you guys, and see you in the next one. Peace.